Okay, cool. Yeah, so if you want to just give me a little background about yourself, kind of up into the point of where you are now.
Yeah, so I'm Bud Hennick, I'm Bud Hennekes. Uh, Recently graduated last May from the University of Missouri with a marketing degree, and I was in the Midwest for 4 years. Previously, grew up in Texas, Shanghai, and the Netherlands, so I kind of had a global perspective there. But after graduating, I was looking to move to the big city again. I kind of missed that from living in Shanghai, and decided to move to New York right out of school. So one of my first jobs out of school was to work with Gary Vaynerchuk at a social media agency, and social media has been something I've been doing for at least 5, 6 years now. I actually started in the online world by creating a blog, aboundlessworld.com, back when I was in high school, and that kind of got me into social media and marketing online. So that's kind of a little bit of background there. And then after VaynerMedia, I was there for about 3 months. It was a little bit big for me, so I was looking to get a little bit more intimate with a startup. So I joined a small startup of about 7, and it was like kind of Goldilocks and the porridge, like too big, too small, and so I was looking for just right. And so having been in New York 9 months, I was looking for a little bit more adventure as well, kind of an adventurous guy myself, and moved to Chile to join a program called Exosphere, which is kind of alternative education with entrepreneurship and building businesses. So right now I'm in Chile and loving it a lot. Kind of had the travel bug, so just some context there. I grew up mostly in Texas, and when I was end of sophomore year, my dad for work was transferred to Shanghai, China. So I packed up my bags and we all moved to China. And so moving to Shanghai, one of the biggest cities in the world, it kind of exposed me to a lot of different things than I had previously experienced. And so since then, I've had a huge travel bug and have had the great opportunity to travel all over the globe. And so I jumped at the opportunity to move to Chile when I had that opportunity.
Can you tell me just a little bit more about what you're doing in Chile and like what your company's about? What like I want to know more.
Yeah, absolutely. So after about 9 months in New York, I was just looking for a little bit something different. At the time, it wasn't the greatest thing for me. I love New York as a city, but just wanted to change things up. So I actually reached out to my friend Carlos, who I met on Twitter, as I had said, and he's the CEO of this company called Exosphere. And so Exosphere is a boot camp that just provides entrepreneurial skills, marketing, coding, various introspection skills. We talk about being self-reliant, all that kind of thing. And it's a 3-month program in Chile. So we're actually in Reñaca, which is right outside of Santiago, the capital city. I think we just ended the 6 weeks, so we have about 6 more weeks left, and there's about 30, 40 participants from all over the world that just kind of come together and learn from different people. There's some Bitcoin people, there's anarchists, there's people from all different perspectives, and so right now we're working on our projects, and so for the next 6 weeks we'll get advice on kind of building businesses locally here or just expanding on our entrepreneurial ideas. So I'm really excited about that, and then there'll be another program in September which will be 8 weeks. So there's programs all over the world to kind of just help people find out what they're doing in life and kind of build businesses.
Can we talk about Twitter? Just kind of how you have used it to kind of get to where you are, what kinds of cool things that you've done with it. Yeah, just like the Twitter, like lay it out for me.
No,
What are you doing with Twitter?
absolutely. So first off, I do have to mention I do have a bit of a Twitter addiction, so to speak. I'm on it all the time.
I think you have like 56,000 tweets that you've made on your Twitter. I just saw that today. I was
You
like,
had to
how
bring
does
that up, didn't
someone?
you? I started Twitter about a year after it came out, so I was a pretty early adopter of the service. I was actually started Twitter, and I tweeted for this internet marketer online, so he actually like paid me to tweet for him, and so that's kind of how I got into it, which is kind of a weird story, and I don't even talk to the guy anymore. But I just immediately found Twitter to be a very valuable tool to make connections in kind of a cocktail party kind of way. So what I mean by that is like you can jump into any conversation with anyone without being seen as weird or creepy. And so being the extrovert I am, I just jumped right at it and started connecting with a bunch of people. When I was about 16, I started a personal development blog where I chronicled my travel journeys and just kind of stuff I was going through as an angry teenager, and I used Twitter to build my audience base for promoting my articles, that kind of thing, to about 30, 40,000 monthly viewers when I was in high school. Basically, purely from Twitter, just like connecting with people, doing guest posts, that kind of thing. And so from the get-go, I saw tremendous value in being able to use Twitter and connect to people. And as I grew older, it kind of evolved into some other things. I can jump into another story real quick, but I was actually able to use Twitter to get my first job right out of school.
How'd you do it?
Yeah, so Gary Vaynerchuk is notorious. He was a wine guy before, and he kind of moved into the social media space, and I really loved what he was doing, and he built a social media company. And so I tried in college, I tried to internship with his company twice, and both times it just wasn't a good fit. One of the interviews I bombed, and the second one they were just growing so fast, and so towards the end of my senior year, I was like, wow, I should probably get on that job hunt, and so I was just on Twitter as I normally was, and Gary Vaynerchuk, the CEO at the time, was tweeting. He's always on Twitter as well. I kind of took from his philosophy of how to use Twitter, but he's like, hey guys, I'm looking to barter some Super Nintendo games or action figures from some wine or something like that if anyone's interested. And it was literally an epiphany moment for me because I had tweeted him before and he kind of knew who I was. But I just turned 21 at the time, and I literally looked across my living room, a bunch of Super Nintendo games collecting dust. And at first I was like, yeah, maybe I'll trade these games for a nice bottle of wine since I just turned 21. But for whatever reason, I was like, let's give this a shot. So I wanted to work with them. Third time's the charm. I tweeted him. I was like, hey Gary, here's Super Nintendo games. Give me 5 minutes of your time in New York. And this is, keep in mind, this is when I'm in Missouri, Midwest. But luckily, because I had traveled so much, I had quite a few miles secured. So I was like, hey, any weekend you choose, I'll fly out, my dime. Give me 5 minutes of your time. I really want to work with you. And kind of just a Hail Mary kind of pass. And sure enough, he responded a few minutes later. He's like, done, come out in 2 weeks. So I flew out and made a really good impression. And next thing I know, I was working for him as soon as I got out of school.
That's pretty amazing, and I think most people just don't understand the power of Twitter. Like, do you have any other cool people that you've, like, any other cool stories that you've done? Like, that, I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
But,
no,
like,
I mean, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think the real thing is, like, most people use social media just to push a message, right? And they don't really use it as a way to add value. And the way I look at Twitter is, like, when I scan my feed, I'm looking at ways to help people. And that kind of just boils down to various other things that have helped me. But I've probably met a good 24 people in real life from Twitter. Actually, the CEO of the program I'm in now, Exosphere, I was able to tweet him to meet up for brunch in New York City, and then that's how I met him, through Twitter. So most of my, like, really important relationships have started in Twitter. I mean, I've reached out to Leo Balbota of the popular Zen Habits blog, which was at one point one of the more popular blogs in the world, and we had tea. So I just look at it ways of, like, you can literally connect with anyone if you just don't think of it as ways to get value for yourself, but just how can you help other people, and then that kind of just is a giant circle of things will come back to you, if that makes sense.
yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Obviously, from a personal standpoint and a brand standpoint, it's a little bit different. But kind of going with the Gary Vaynerchuk school of thought, because I worked at his agency for a while, and so they do a really good job from a brand perspective. So from a brand, one valuable tool you can use is the Twitter search feature. And so definitely interactions are huge. But if you're a brand, you can be searching keywords or phrases that your customers are going to be tweeting out on Twitter, right? And this kind of goes back to the cocktail party analogy of that. If a brand, you can jump into any conversation without being weird or creepy. So if you're a brand that sells, let's say, like if you're a shoe brand, for example, start searching keywords around shoes. Not just like, I want to buy shoes, but just like any kind of conversation your customer is going to be having. And then maybe a favorite or retweet. If you jump in on these conversations, people think it's a pretty big deal if you're a respectable brand, and they're more likely to buy from you just from jumping in random conversations.
Yeah, I have like two more questions. So one, what advice would you give people who are graduating from college, who are looking to land their first job? Like, what advice would you give them during that job search process?
I'm glad you asked that. And first, let me preface it by saying I was a terrible student. I like when I say I was a terrible student, I barely graduated college, kind of terrible student, and it wasn't because I like was dumb or anything like that. I had difficulty relating to some of the structures of how schools worked. But for those of you who are still looking for your job, I think the most important piece of advice I would say is just find ways to stand out. All right. So obviously that's a pretty simple saying, but like really go above and beyond. So I'll just give you a quick example of kind of back to how I landed my first job. So not only did I fly from the Midwest to meet for a 5-minute interview, I took a few different other approaches that I think helped me really stand out. And I don't say that to like brag or anything like that, but just to show that like the average person can really go above and beyond. And if you do that, you're going to stand out and you're going to significantly increase your chances to get hired. So the two things I kind of did, and I think everyone can do this, is when I went into my meeting with Gary, I did crazy research on the company, right? So obviously I think every person should do that before an interview. But not only did I bring my resume, I also knew a few of the brands that VaynerMedia was hoping to work for because Gary tweeted it on Instagram, or tweeted a picture that he took on Instagram of, hey, these are some brands I'm looking forward to working with or whatever. So I actually came in with a case story of several of the brands that he wanted to bring on as clients and how we could get them as clients. So I did a short case study. I was like, hey, their Facebook can be improved this way, their Twitter can be improved this way. Wow. And just to go above and beyond, right? And it's something very simple to showcase my expertise, because obviously I believed in the value I could bring to them. And so not only did I bring my resume, I plopped in a case study of several brands and how we can bring them on. And so any way you can add value like that, without like, you obviously don't go in and say like these brands are terrible or anything like that, but any way you can just show, hey, like if you bring me on, I can add value. And then the second little tweak I kind of was proud of doing as well is I created a small landing page. I set up a free WordPress site. It was $10. I actually bought the domain. It was thankyouVaynerMedia.com, and so that was my way of a thank you note, right? So I bought the domain, I threw up their little logo and colors, and then after the interview, I made a 30-second video of, hey, thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it, you know. And so these are kind of two small things that really, in my opinion, made me stand out. And there's something you can replicate regardless of the industry you're in, right? So don't just send a thank you email. That's standard. Like really think of ways you can kind of step up and make yourself noticed, you know.
Okay, so lastly, I want to know, what do you want to do with your life? So like what's your like main goal at this point, like for yourself?
That's a really
it's a really hard question. I know
it's it's a good question to ask, and that's kind of why I'm here in Chile, is just for that self-discovery process. Without a doubt, I do want to form my life around some kind of entrepreneurship. I don't know if I'm made out for the corporate world, and I do have a very strong passion for writing, so I definitely would like to get into the content play, whether that be developing fiction. I'm actually working on a fiction novel for the next 6 weeks. I'm here testing that idea, so definitely want to surround something around writing. I'm very passionate about travel as well, so any way I can incorporate both travel, writing, and community into my life, I think that's where I'm heading. As far as specifics, I'm really kind of just enjoying the moment here, doing a lot of great things with Exosphere, and just kind of taking it day by day.